The grand conclave of the Ethelgardian Empire did not smell of victory. It smelled of ozone, stagnant air, and the copper tang of ancient fear. Within the obsidian walls of the Spire of Concordance, the air was thick, pressurized by the collective anxiety of 1,000 species facing the precipice of extinction. High Chancellor Valerius stood at the center of the dais, his 4 hands resting upon the railing of the pod, his compound eyes reflecting the holographic devastation swirling above the assembly. The great rotunda, a chamber large enough to house a small moon, was usually a place of diplomatic pageantry, where the silks of the Xyla weavers flowed like water and the heavy armor of the Vrel warlords clanked in rhythmic intimidation. Today, there was no pageantry. There was only the silence of the grave, punctuated by the soft, weeping hum of the shield generators struggling to hold back the inevitable. The holographic projection in the center of the room displayed the Galactic rim, a spiraling arm of stars that had once been a beacon of trade and exploration. Now it was a darkened scar. The Hollow Legion was not merely conquering, they were unmaking. They did not occupy territory, they consumed the atomic structure of worlds, leaving behind only void and the echoing screams of dead civilizations. Valerius felt the weight of his 300 years. He looked at the gathered representatives, the terrified, the proud, the resigned. They were arguing again, a cacophony of desperate voices overlapping in the translation matrix, a symphony of futility. Barrier at the Antares drift has fallen, a Vrel general rumbled, his voice like grinding tectonic plates. Our fleets are dust. The kinetic bombardment failed. The plasma storms failed. We threw the bulk of the Third Armada into the maw, and the Legion did not even slow down. They ate the fire. The general slammed a fist onto his console, cracking the interface. There is nothing left to throw. We are fighting ghosts with sticks. A ripple of panicked murmurs moved through the hall like a cold wind. A slender Xyla diplomat, her skin translucent and shimmering with bioluminescent stress patterns, stepped forward, her voice trembling but amplified by the room's acoustics. Then we must flee, she whispered, though the sound carried to the highest tiers. We must abandon the core worlds. We must scatter to the dark edges between the galaxies where they might not find us. And starve in the cold dark, the Vrel retorted. Die on our knees or die in the void, is that the choice? Valerius cleared his throat. The sound was not loud, but it possessed the gravity of authority that silenced the room. He manipulated the controls of the dais, and the hologram shifted, zooming away from the burning front lines, past the core worlds, past the nebulae of the trade routes, until it settled on a region of space that was conspicuously empty. It was a black sphere on the map, a void within the void, surrounded by warning buoys placed there by civilizations that had turned to dust 5,000 years ago. There is a third choice, Valerius said, his voice level, betraying none of the terror that seized his hearts. We do not flee, we do not die alone, we call for help. The room went deadly silent. The silence was heavier than the one before, it was the silence of heresy. The Vrel general narrowed his eyes. You speak of the silent ones, he growled. You speak of myths, children's stories told to frighten hatchlings into obedience. If you stray too far, the silent ones will take you. They are not real, Chancellor, and if they were, they have been dead for 5 millennia. Valerius tapped a sequence into the console. The hologram zoomed further into the black sphere. They are not dead, Valerius said. They are waiting. Our archives, the deepest ones, the ones written on stone before the Age of Light, speak of them. They were the architects of the first era. They were the ones who broke the chains of the precursors. And then, 5,000 years ago, they vanished. They retreated behind the veil of silence and broadcast a single message. Do not disturb the peace, or you will find the war. The Xyla diplomat shivered, her lights dimming to a pale blue. That is a threat, Chancellor, not an invitation. To cross the veil is to invite death. Every ship that has ever entered that sector has simply ceased to exist, not destroyed, just gone. We are already dead, Valerius replied, his voice hardening. The Hollow Legion will be here within 3 planetary rotations. They will consume this spire. They will consume your hatchlings. They will eat the history of our people until we are forgotten. If we are to die, let us die gambling on a legend. If the Silent Ones exist, they are the only force in the galaxy capable of halting the Legion. If they do not, or if they kill us, we have lost nothing we were not already destined to lose. He looked up, scanning the S of the assembly. I propose we send a ship, not a fleet, a single vessel, unarmed, a herald, to the very center of the quiet zone, to knock on the door of the gods and see if they are sleeping, or if they are merely holding their breath. The debate that followed was furious, fueled by desperation and ancient superstition, but in the end, the logic of the doomed prevailed. There was no other hope. A ship was commissioned. It was a sleek, diplomatic courier, the last prayer stripped of all weaponry, its hull painted in the universal colors of truce, white and gold. Valerius himself would not go. His place was here, to die with his people if the gamble failed. Instead, he chose Ambassador Kalin of the Xyla, for her people were sensitive to empathy and intent, and General Torg of the Vrel to represent the martial strength they were losing. It was a suicide mission, and as the last prayer engaged its slip drive and vanished toward the forbidden coordinates, Valerius stood at the window of the spire, watching the stars, wondering if he had just doomed the galaxy to a faster, more violent death. The journey to the quiet zone was unlike any spaceflight General Torg had ever endured. Usually, slip space was a chaotic tunnel of violet energy and swirling gravity currents. But as they crossed the demarcation line, the ancient, invisible border that marked the territory of the Silent Ones, the turbulence vanished. The slipstream became unnervingly smooth. The hum of the reactor dampened. Even the light of the stars seemed to stretch and slow down. Inside the cockpit, Kalin sat with her eyes closed, her hands gripping the arms of her chair. "Can you feel it?" she whispered. Torg grunted, checking the sensor arrays for the 1,000th time. "I feel nothing. The sensors are dead, no background radiation, no comms traffic, no hyperspace echoes. It's like a tomb out here." "Not emptiness," Kalin corrected, her voice strained. "Pressure I can feel. Observation, something is watching us, not from a ship, but from everywhere." Torg scoffed, though his hand drifted to the handle of his sidearm. "You psychics and your feelings. We are flying through dead space. If there were defenses, we would be ash by now." They traveled deeper. The navigation computer, usually precise to the nanometer, began to return error messages. It wasn't malfunctioning, it simply couldn't comprehend the geometry of the space they were entering. The stars outside didn't look right. They were too organized. Torg looked out the viewport and gasped. "Look at the constellations," he said, his voice dropping an octave. Kalin opened her eyes and looked. The stars in this sector were not scattered by the random chaos of galactic formation. They were arranged, perfect geometric lines, triangles, circles, a massive stellar dodecahedron of burning suns surrounding a central point of absolute darkness. "They moved the stars," Kalin breathed, horror and awe warring in her mind. "They didn't just inhabit this space, they terraformed the galaxy itself." The last prayer drifted toward the center of the formation. There was no planet there, no space station. There was only a singularity, a black hole that was not feeding but singing. A low, gravitational frequency that vibrated the hull of their ship. And orbiting the event horizon was a structure. It was not a ship in any conventional sense. It was a ring, a halo of matte black metal that encircled the black hole, spanning millions of kilometers. It possessed no lights, no engines, no windows. It was a monolith of absolute silence. "Hail them," Torg ordered, his bravado failing him. Kalin activated the transmitter. She had prepared a speech, a diplomatic plea detailing the plight of the galaxy, the atrocity of the Hollow Legion, the desperation of the Council. She opened the channel. "This is Ambassador Kalin of the United Galactic Council. We come in peace. We come in desperation. We seek the ones who sleep. We seek the aid of humanity." Silence. The static of the universe was gone. There was only the breathing of the two crew members. Seconds stretched into minutes, minutes into hours. They drifted closer to the ring. The immense scale of it became oppressive. The surface was not smooth, they realized. It was etched with text. Miles-high letters carved into the neutronium alloy. Kalin adjusted the sensors to magnify. The language was ancient, a precursor dialect that the translator matrix struggled to parse. "We are the vigil. We are the wall." "Turn back. They are not answering," Torg said, sweat beading on his brow. "They are ignoring us." "No," Kalin said. "They are processing." Suddenly, the ship lost power. Not a malfunction, a suppression. The lights died. The gravity plating failed. They floated in the dark, weightless, illuminated only by the distortion of light from the black hole outside. Then a voice spoke. It did not come from the speakers. It came from the air itself, vibrating the ness of their ears, resonating in their chests. It was a voice of multiple tones, layered, synthetic, yet deeply biological, sounding weary and ancient. 5,000 years, the voice said. It wasn't a question, it was a statement of time past. "We set the boundary, we gave the warning. Why have you woken the garden?" Kalin floated to the console, her bioluminescence pulsing rapidly. We are dying," she stammered, projecting her thoughts as clearly as she could. "A great enemy has risen, the Hollow Legion. They consume all. We have no defense left. We remembered the legends of humanity. We came to beg." "Beg," the voice repeated. The word dripped with a strange melancholia. "You come to the warriors to beg for peace. You come to the butchers to ask for life. Do you know why we went silent, little ONES?" The ship shuddered. A beam of light, solid and blue, erupted from the ring and engulfed the last prayer. In an instant, they were no longer in space, they were inside. The transition was instant. They stood gravity restored on a platform of polished white stone under a sky that mimicked a terrestrial dawn. The air smelled of rain and soil. Before them stood a figure. It was human. He was not a giant nor a cyborg monstrosity. He was a man of average height, wearing robes of simple gray weave. He looked tired. His hair was gray, his face lined with the passage of unnatural time. He held a datapad in one hand and a gardening tool in the other. He looked at the alien ambassadors with eyes that seemed to contain the deaths of galaxies. "I am Exarch Solon," the human said. His voice was soft, human, stripping away the terrifying amplification of the ship's voice. "I am the caretaker of this watch. You have broken the edict." Torg stepped forward, his warrior instincts trying to assert dominance over his fear. "We had no choice. The Legion is days away from our capital. They are machines of death. We thought if the legends were true, you could stop them." Solon looked at Torg, then at Kalen. He sighed, a sound of infinite weariness. "The Legion," he muttered. "We know of them. A self-replicating mining drone swarm from the Andromeda sector, glitched programming, voracious, primitive." Primitive, Torg's mandibles clicked in shock. "They have destroyed 3,000 star systems. They are invincible." "They are a nuisance," Solon corrected gently. "But they are a natural nuisance. The galaxy has an immune system. Eventually, a supernova or a black hole would catch them. It is the way of things. Civilizations rise, they fall. We do not interfere. We swore." Kalen stepped closer. "Swore to whom? Why? You have the power to save billions. Why do you hide here? Why do you let us die?" Solon turned his back on them, looking out over the simulated landscape of the station. "Because we are not the saviors you think we are. You call us the Silent Ones. Before that, we were called the World Breakers. 5,000 years ago, humanity did not hide. We ruled, we enforced peace. And in doing so, we stagnated the galaxy. We stopped the evolution of species. We played God. And then we fought a war against ourselves, a civil war of ideologies, the weapons we used." He paused, his shoulders slumping. "We cracked the fabric of reality. We erased entire timelines. We realized that our presence, our interference, was more dangerous than any plague or swarm. So we fixed what we could and we exiled ourselves. We swore to let the galaxy grow on its own, to let you sink or swim. Because if we save you, we own you. And we do not want to be masters anymore." "We do not ask for a master," Kalen pleaded, tears of light streaming down her face. "We ask for a brother, a shield. If you do not act, there will be no galaxy left to evolve. Is your vow more important than the existence of life itself?" Solon stood silent for a long time. He tapped his datapad. The air above them shimmered, displaying the current tactical map of the galaxy. He watched the red stain of the Hollow Legion spreading. He watched the desperate, dying flares of the Ethelgard fleets. He watched the suffering. The calm facade cracked just for a moment, revealing a deep, burning compassion that had been suppressed for millennia. "If we step out," Solon said, his voice dropping to a whisper, "we do not step out halfway. If humanity goes to war, we end it. Totally, efficiently. And the silence will be broken. You will know us again, and you will fear us again." "We already fear the dark," Torg said. "We would rather fear the light that saves us." Solon turned back to them. His eyes were no longer weary. They were cold, calculating, and terrifyingly sharp. The gardener was gone, the soldier had arrived. "Very well," he said. "You have called us, the silence is ended." He touched his collar. "Command, authorization, Solon 9 Alpha, the edict is suspended. Condition, existential threat confirmed. Protocol, awakened fury, spin up the fleets. Target parameters, the hall. Our Legion, total liquidation." The ground beneath them shook, not the station. The universe seemed to shake. The sky above the simulated garden dissolved, revealing the interior of the ring, and from the darkness of the black hole they came. They did not come as a swarm. They came as a geometric inevitability, ships of sliver and white, sleek, devoid of jagged edges, humming with zero-point energy. They emerged from the event horizon, phasing into reality. Hundreds, thousands, ships the size of cities, dreadnoughts that dwarfed the Vrel's largest carriers, and at the center a vessel so large it had its own gravity well, the flagship Terra's Wrath. The sheer scale of the mobilization was sickening. The Vrel general fell to his knees. He had bragged about his armada of 4,000 ships. The human fleet emerging from the storage of the Singularity numbered in the millions of automated drones, supported by tens of thousands of capital ships. "Go back to your ship," Solon said, his voice echoing with the authority of a god of war. "Return to your council. Tell them to lower their shields. Tell them to stand down. We will handle the rest." Back at the Spire of Concordance, the situation had devolved into panic. The Hollow Legion had arrived earlier than predicted. The sky above the capital world of Ethelgard was a mosaic of fire. The orbital defense grid was shattering. Debris rained down on the cities, striking the shields of the spire. Chancellor Valerius watched the end of his world. The Vrel Armada had been wiped out in the first hour. The Xyla frigates were burning in the upper atmosphere. The Legion ships, jagged, ugly masses of repurposing nanites and cannons, were descending like locusts. "Shield failure in Sector 7, a technician screamed. "They are landing, breach in the Great Hall." Valerius drew his ceremonial energy blade. It was a futile gesture, but he would die standing. The doors to the chamber buckled. The screech of metal tearing filled the air. A Legion war machine, a multi-legged crab of black steel and grinding gears, forced its way in. It was followed by a dozen more. The guards opened fire, their plasma bolts splashing harmlessly against the Legion's adaptive armor. The machines advanced, their circular saws spinning, ready to consume the biomass of the Council. Valerius closed his eyes. So this is the silence, he thought, the final silence. And then the sky broke open. It was not a sound. It was a pressure wave. A boom so loud it registered on seismographs across the planet. The clouds above the capital were instantly vaporized. The Legion machines froze, their sensors blinded by a sudden, overwhelming surge of energy. Valerius opened his eyes and looked up through the shattered dome. The sky was white. A single ship had dropped out of warp directly above the city. It was a spearhead of alabaster metal, 5 kilometers long. It hung there, defying gravity, motionless. The atmospheric entry heat had not even touched its paint. A voice broadcasted over every frequency, overriding the Legion's jamming, overriding the Council's comms, booming from the public speakers in the streets. It was a voice of calm, terrifying politeness. "Attention, aggressor swarm designation, Hollow Legion. You are in violation of Galactic Ordinance 1, interfering with sentient development. Cease hostilities immediately and power down. This is your only warning." The Legion did not understand warnings. The hive mind reacted with aggression. The swarm in orbit turned its weapons toward the white ship. Thousands of plasma lances and kinetic drivers fired simultaneously. The sky lit up with enough firepower to crack a planet's crust. The beams struck the human ship and dissipated. A golden hexagonal grid flared tight around the hull of the vessel. The energy was absorbed, cycled, and fed into the ship's capacitors. The human ship did not even rock. "Warning acknowledged as rejected," the voice said. The tone shifted. It was no longer polite, it was clinical, commencing sanitization. The human ship did not fire glowing beams. It did not launch missiles. It simply pulsed. A wave of distortion rippled out from the vessel, moving at the speed of light. It passed through the Ethelgard shields without harming them. It passed through the buildings. It passed through the bodies of the Council members, feeling like a warm breeze. But when it hit the Legion machines, physics changed. The bonding agents holding the Legion's metal together simply ceased to function. The strong nuclear force within their specific alloy matrix was negated. In the Council chamber, the terrifying war machines collapsed into piles of fine, metallic dust. They didn't explode. They just fell apart. In orbit, the millions of Legion ships underwent the same dissolution. One moment, a swarm of destroyers. The next, a cloud of glitter drifting in the solar wind. Valerius stared at the pile of dust that had been a death mac. 9 seconds ago, the silence returned to the room, but this was not the silence of fear. It was the silence of awe. The human ship descended slowly, landing in the plaza outside the spire with a grace that belied its mass. A ramp descended. Valerius ran, stumbling out of the spire, followed by the surviving Council members. They gathered at the foot of the ramp. A phalanx of soldiers marched out. They were clad in armor that looked like white ceramic, fully sealed, faceless helmets glowing with a soft T-visor light. They carried weapons that hummed with contained power, but they did not aim them. They stood at attention, creating a corridor. Exarch Solon walked down the ramp, flanked by Kalen and Torg. The two ambassadors looked changed. They walked straighter, carrying the weight of what they had seen. Valerius approached Solon, his hands trembling. He bowed low, lower than he had ever bowed to any emperor. "You came," he whispered. "You saved us. The legends, they were pale shadows of the truth." Solon looked at the destruction around the city, the burning buildings, the dead. His expression was grim. "We came late," he said. "We should have come sooner, but the law is hard to break." "You destroyed them," the Vrel general said, looking at the dust. "The entire Legion in seconds. How?" We adjusted the local constants of physics to render their armor unstable, Solon said, as if explaining how to tie a shoelace. It is a standard dispersal tactic. We do not like explosions. They are messy. The High Council gathered around, looking at the humans as if they were divine avatars. You will stay? Valerius asked, hope blooming in his chest. You will lead us. With your power, we could rebuild the galaxy. We could end all war. We could be safe forever. Solon looked at his soldiers, then back at the aliens. The sadness was back in his eyes. This was the moment he had feared, the dependency, the worship. We will not rule you, Solon said firmly. We are not your kings, we are your janitors. We have cleaned up the mess. We will help you rebuild your homes. We will share medical data. We will teach you how to improve your shields, but we will not govern. You must find your own way. We will return to the quiet zone. But he paused. But, Valerius asked. But the silence is over, Solon said. We are awake now. We will leave a beacon. If the darkness comes again, not petty wars, not border disputes, but the real darkness, you call us, and we will answer. Valerius nodded, understanding. The real darkness, the Legion was merely a nuisance. Solon's face hardened. The Legion was running from something, Chancellor. We analyzed their flight logs in the nanosecond before we dusted them. They were not invading. They were fleeing. They came from the intergalactic void, from the dark space between here and Andromeda. A chill went down Valerius's spine. What were they fleeing? Solon looked up at the sky past the stars into the deep, infinite black. Something old, something we thought we killed in the War of Ash. It seems we missed one. Weeks passed. The galaxy changed. The presence of the humans, even as they withdrew back to their border, altered the political landscape. Peace treaties were signed, not out of trust, but out of the shared knowledge that a higher power was watching. The Pax Humana was not enforced by garrisons, but by the memory of the white ships and the dust. On the bridge of the Terra's Wrath, docked once more near the event horizon of the Singularity, Solon stood watching the readouts. Admiral Vance, a woman of sharp features and iron posture, stood beside him. The Council is stabilizing, Vance said. They are learning, they are cooperating for the first time in history. Fear is a potent teacher, Solon murmured. We exposed ourselves, Exarch, Vance said quietly. The signal we used to disintegrate the Legion, it was high energy. It would have been visible to high-band sensors across the local cluster. I know, Solon said. Then it knows we are here, Vance said. The enemy, the one the Legion was running from. Solon turned to the tactical map. He zoomed out past the galaxy into the empty void. There, deep in the dark, a shadow was moving. It was not a fleet. It was a biological distortion, a hunger that spanned light years. The ancient enemy. The reason humanity had built the walls in the first place. The silence had been a camouflage, a way to hide the galaxy from the predator by playing dead. But the predator had sniffed them out. The Legion had been the rabbits flushing out the game. And by saving the rabbits, humanity had revealed the location of the Hunter's Lodge. We bought them time, Solon said. Maybe 1,000 years, maybe 10, but the enemy is coming. What are your orders, Exarch? Vance asked. Her hand hovered over the console that controlled the full might of the human military, weaponry capable of restructuring reality, engines that be. Earn stars as fuel, soldiers who had slept in cryostasis for 5 millennia waiting for this command. Solon looked at the stars of the Ethelgard, the Xyla, the Vrel, the messy, chaotic, beautiful galaxy they had just saved. He realized he didn't regret waking up. It was better to die on your feet than sleep through the apocalypse. Orders, Solon smiled, a thin, dangerous smile. Send the signal to the deep fleet, wake the sleepers in the Titan vaults, unlock the armory of the Third Era. He turned back to the window, staring into the abyss where the monsters lived. We have been silent for too long. I think I'm in the mood to make some noise. If they want a war, let us show them what the word truly means. The human fleet did not go back to sleep. The lights of the Great Ring intensified. The Singularity began to spin faster, drawing in power. Across the quiet zone, for light years in every direction, the dormant megastructures of humanity began to power up. Forges ignited, shipyards cycled. The sleeping giant flexed its muscles. The galaxy thought the war was over. They celebrated the peace. They did not know that the skirmish with the Legion was merely the opening shot. But they were safe for now. The gardeners were awake. The walls were manned, and standing on the parapets of reality, looking out into the cold dark, humanity smiled. They were ready. The silence was broken. and the roar that followed would shake the foundations of the universe. High Chancellor Valerius stood on the balcony of the rebuilt spire. He held a small device Solon had given him, a direct line to the vigil. He looked up at the night sky. The stars looked the same, but they felt different. They felt protected. "Grandfather," a young Ethelgardian hatchling asked, tugging on his robes, "are the Silent Ones monsters? The history books say they were world breakers." Valerius picked up the child. He looked at the white scar in the sky where the human ship had been. "No, little one," Valerius said softly. "They are not monsters, but they are very good at being monsters when they have to be. They are the ones who hold back the dark." "Will they come back?" "I hope not," Valerius said, clutching the communicator tight. "Because if they come back, it means the end of everything. But if the end comes, at least we will not face it alone." Far above, in the cold vacuum, a single human drone cloaked in stealth fields watched the spire. It recorded the conversation. It beamed the data back to the Terra's wrath. Solon watched the feed. He watched the alien grandfather comfort the child. He took a deep breath. "Worth it," he whispered. He turned to the darkness of the void, his eyes burning with golden light. "Come and get us," he challenged the abyss. And the abyss shivered.